everyone. This is Tony Felosi with episode 4 of Appalachia History and Mysteries. Tonight's story is Murder Meets Karma in Bloody Harlan. Bloody Harlan County has earned that name many times over the past 150 years. From feuds where many or more people died than in the more famous Hatfield and McCoy battles, to the bloody coal mine wars in the 1920s, 30s, and early 40s, and the many killings over personal grudges or just plain greed. This is one of those stories. Headline: Harlan, April 25th, 1951. Father and son die in gunfire on city streets. Avery and Joe Hensley, victims of violence, two separate outbreaks of gun warfare on Harlan city streets last night and early this morning took the lives of Avery Hensley, 44, and his stepson Joe, 26. Both men were former members of the Harlan City Police Department. Avery Hensley was mortally wounded at 6:45 p.m. as he stood on East Central Street while leaning against a telephone pole in front of his taxi service. He was hit 6 times. Witnesses say after Avery was shot that Joe, who had just walked about a half a block away, ran back to where his stepfather was lying in a pool of blood, picked up his pistol, and chased Claude Beach, who jumped into a car that his brother Wheeler Beach was driving. Joe tried to fire the pistol, but the cylinder was locked up and the gun would not shoot. Avery died at 11 p.m. Joe Hensley called Don Harville to pick him up from the hospital. Don Harville worked for Avery and Joe. They drove about 2 blocks and stopped in the back parking lot of the VTC bus station. Joe was in the back seat. Before he could get out of the car, it was surrounded by 2 policemen and an employee of the VTC bus line, an ex-policeman named Doc Nance. Nance proceeded to hit the driver, Don Harville, over the head with a pistol, causing surprisingly little damage. He then leaned inside the taxi and shot Joe Hensley point blank in the head. Joe died instantly. The time was 2 a.m. The Hensleys were both dead, a job well done by assassins, except for one pesky little detail. Unknown to the killers, 2 construction workers on the 3rd shift saw the whole thing while heading to lunch at an all-night diner. Avery and Joe were brought into town earlier by their employee, Don Harville. If only they had known, Don wanted much more than a job. The Beach brothers have a long history of violence, having been indicted for murder, arson, and attempted murder in just the last 2 years. That's just what we know about. They were acquitted of the murder charge, and most of the other charges they only received a very light sentence. Who were they working for? Why were these particular people targeted? Headline: Sunday, April 29th, 1951. 5 indicted in Harlan slayings. A Harlan County grand jury indicted 5 men on murder charges. Claude and Wheeler Beach were indicted for the killing of Avery Hensley. Charlie Wade and Ray Smith, Harlan policemen, as well as Doc Nance, were indicted for the murder of Joe Hensley. Police Chief Logan Middleton said the Beaches and Hensleys had been good friends for a long while. They'd worked together at the Harlan City Police Department and had always been friendly, but had fallen out recently. FYI, putting bullets into your buddy kinda does that. Headline: Claude Beach gets life imprisonment in Avery Hensley's death. Commonwealth's witness Luther Serafit was standing on the corner of Central and 1st Street. He saw the blast coming from the pistol and saw Claude Beach leave the scene and get into a red Ford Mercury that his brother Wheeler Beach was driving. Other witnesses say they saw Claude running from the scene with gun in hand. Headline: Judge Hogg sentences Nance to die in the electric chair. He did that like a boss? Boss Hogg? Get it? Okay, on with the story. Doc Nance to die July 2nd at the state penitentiary in Eddyville for the slaying of Joe Hensley. Nance was convicted mostly because of the eyewitness testimony of Arthur Campbell of Cincinnati, Ohio, and Carl Beerley of Oceana, West Virginia, both employed on a construction job near the murder scene. Pro tip of the day: when people are facing the chair or life in prison, they talk a lot. Headline: March 10th, 1952. Ex-mayor, ex-police chief, charged in conspiracy to kill friend. Merle Middleton, the former mayor, and his brother Logan Middleton, the former police chief, were indicted for conspiring to pay Claude Beach $3,000 in cash. That will be approximately $35,000 in today's money, plus expenses and legal fees for the killing of Avery Hensley. The Middleton brothers are partners in the VTC bus line and have been heavily involved in Harlan County politics for many years. Headline: April 18, 1952. Slayer gets sentenced of 5 years instead of execution for murder. Imagine that. Sentenced once to the electric chair, then granted a new trial, Doc Nance today was given a 5-year sentence for manslaughter in the almost-year-old case of the slaying of Joe Hensley. Local officials in Harlan have given politics as the reason for the Hensley killings. They have also indicated that Claude Beach may be a key witness in the Middleton's conspiracy case. Headline: April 23, 1952. Hensley widows file suits against Middleton and others for $400,000. A total of $400,000 in damages have been asked in 2 suits stemming from the killing of Avery and Joe Hensley. The suits were filed by Mrs. Elizabeth Hensley, widow of Joe, and Mrs. Beatrice Hensley, widow of Avery. Don Harville will be a key witness. Go figure. Overview and karma. The newspaper articles give us a limited insight into the real reason for the murders of Avery and Joe Hensley. Avery and Joe were ex-policemen. They worked with the Beaches at one point, providing protection for the very lucrative liquor trade. Seeing how profitable it was, Avery and his wife bought the Crystal Kitchen and ran a taxi service as a front for bootlegging. You would call the taxi stand, give them your order, and get your alcohol delivered, early DoorDash. How you laundered your money was through the restaurant and taxi service. Avery and Joe were set up by Don Harville, who wanted Avery's wife and the business. So both Hensleys had to die for him to accomplish this. He partnered with the Middletons to provide information on when and where the Hensleys would be. Who better to drive them to their place of death than a man they trusted? The Beaches were known enforcers that worked for the Middletons, who needed the Hensleys out of the way because they had taken a large portion of the bootlegging trade. So with the deaths of the Hensleys, the Middletons regained most of the liquor business, and Harville became a partner with Beatrice Hensley. I do not think the lawsuit against the Middletons bore fruit, but I suspect they were paid to stop. Merle and Logan never went to jail. Claude Beach was released within 5 to 7 years. Doc Nance pulled less than 5 years, and the Crystal Kitchen and the taxi stand continued to prosper under Beatrice Hensley and her new partner, Don Harville. That is, until karma came a-calling. Headline: January 13, 1961. Don Harville and John Blanton killed instantly. Police said Don Harville, around 50, and Johnny Blanton, around 43, shot each other to death outside the Crystal Kitchen on Friday night. The diner is adjacent to the cab stand owned by Harville and Beatrice Hensley. Witnesses say that after threats by Blanton, Don Harville followed him outside. Police say Blanton and Harville opened fire on each other. Both were killed instantly. Harville from several .25 caliber bullets to the abdomen, and Blanton by 2 shots from Harville's .38 revolver, one striking him in the elbow and the fatal one striking him in the throat. Don Harville dies less than 20 feet from where Avery Hensley, the man that he had betrayed, died 10 years earlier. Thank you for watching this episode of Appalachia History and Mysteries. Please like, share, and smash the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously. Until next time, this is Tony Filosi saying thank you and goodbye.